He showed up at the talent show wearing humble clothes and made an unusual request. "If I sing well, would you give me a plate of hot dumplings?" No one expected that this elderly man was hiding an unbelievable secret. The live studio of America's rising stars buzzed with that electric tension only a real broadcast can generate. Colored spotlights danced across the stage as the audience waited for the next performance. Madison Rivera, one of the most beloved hosts on American television, adjusted her mic and mentally rehearsed the questions she planned to ask the next contestants. It seemed like just another night of auditions, or so everyone believed. To the right of the stage, an unexpected figure caught security's attention. An older man with silver hair, wearing a faded but clean button-down shirt, carefully repaired slacks, and shoes that had clearly walked many hard miles, stood quietly watching everything with eyes full of wonder. He didn't match the show's polished atmosphere, yet something in his posture radiated unshakable dignity. "Sir, you can't be here," said Jake Donovan, head of security, approaching him with polite firmness. "This area is for registered contestants only." The old man smiled with kindness, so disarming that Jake hesitated for a moment. "My name is John Mitchell, and I would very much like to participate in your program. I have something special I want to show you." Jake looked around, clearly uneasy. It was obvious this man hadn't gone through registration, wasn't on any list, and didn't fit the usual profile of the show's competitors. "Mr. Mitchell, you must understand. We have rules. You can't just walk in and perform. There's a registration process, interviews, a screening." "I know I'm breaking protocol," John replied softly. "But I don't have much time or money to go through all the steps. I just wanted a chance, a single chance, to show what I still have to offer." At that moment, Madison, who was walking backstage to check last-minute details before returning on air, overheard the conversation. Curious, she approached the group. Something in the man's voice caught her attention instantly. "What's going on here?" she asked. "Ms. Rivera," Jake explained. "This gentleman wants to audition, but he's not registered." Madison looked at John Mitchell and saw something that struck her immediately. Not despair, not madness. Hope. Quiet, steady hope, the kind she rarely saw. "Mr. Mitchell," Madison asked gently, "what exactly would you like to do on the show?" John inhaled deeply, as if preparing to reveal something precious. "Ms. Rivera, I know I don't look impressive. I know I don't fit the image of the performers you usually feature. But I have a proposal." "What proposal?" Madison asked, already intrigued. "If I sing well, you'll give me a plate of hot dumplings." Silence fell. Jake, who had been ready to escort the man out, froze. Madison blinked a few times, processing what she had heard. This wasn't a request for money, fame, a record deal, or anything glamorous. It was simply food. "A plate of dumplings?" Madison repeated, making sure she'd understood. "Yes, ma'am. Nothing fancy. Just enough to stop the hunger. I haven't had a real meal in 2 days, and I thought maybe I could trade a song for dinner." The sincerity in his voice struck Madison like lightning. In all her years hosting talent shows, she'd seen people beg for million-dollar contracts, luxury cars, homes, exotic vacations. But no one had ever asked simply for food. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "you're telling me you came here willing to perform in front of the whole country for a plate of dumplings?" "Exactly, Ms. Rivera. Music has always been my joy, even in hard times. If I can use it to earn something as simple as a meal, then it's worth trying." Jake looked at Madison, waiting for instructions. According to protocol, he should remove the man immediately. But how do you turn away someone with a request so painfully human? "And you truly can sing?" Madison asked. John smiled with quiet confidence. I may not have much left in my life, but one thing I know for certain. My voice can still touch people. Music never left my heart, even when everything else did. At that moment, the show's director, Harold Bennett, appeared backstage. "Madison, we're back on air in 3 minutes. What's the holdup?" "Harold," she said quickly, pulling him aside. "I need to talk to you." She explained the situation in a rush. Harold stared at John, then at Madison, then back at John again. "Madison, you know this is against every rule we have. We can't just put some random man on stage. What if he's unstable? What if he can't sing? What if this is a scam?" "Harold, look into his eyes," Madison said quietly. "Do you see malice? Do you see madness? I see someone who's struggling, but still standing with dignity." John, hearing their conversation, approached respectfully. "I understand your fears, but I'm not here to deceive anyone. I'm simply a man who believes music can touch the human heart, and I'm ready to prove it in exchange for a chance to eat." Harold exhaled heavily. The battle between protocol and compassion was written all over his face. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, "you understand this is live national television? Millions will be watching." "I understand perfectly," John replied, "and that's exactly why I came. If I'm going to sing for food, let it be in front of as many people as possible. Maybe someone out there needs to hear that it's never too late to begin again." His words stunned the entire crew. Madison looked at Harold, pleading now. "Harold, in 20 years of television, I've never asked for anything for myself. I'm asking now. Let him perform. We won't regret it." Harold checked his watch, glanced at the anxious team, then at John once more. There was something about this man that didn't add up, yet commanded respect. "Fine," he said at last. "But we do have rules," Harold Bennett said sharply. "Maximum 2 songs. And if the audience doesn't like the first one, we stop immediately." He looked at the elderly man with a mix of doubt and curiosity. "And Mr. Mitchell, I hope you really can sing, because after a conversation like that, people will expect something extraordinary." John Mitchell smiled with a confidence that seemed to rise from the deepest part of his soul. "Mr. Bennett, I have a surprise that I believe will please you. Trust me." With those words, he was escorted toward the stage, the very place where his life and the lives of everyone watching were about to change forever. The studio lights flared back to full brightness as Madison Rivera stepped onto the stage, followed closely by John. The audience, who had been chatting during the commercial break, quieted quickly. Something unusual was happening. They could feel it. It wasn't often that a man with such humble appearance took the main stage of America's rising stars. "Friends," Madison began, with her signature warm yet commanding voice, "we just witnessed a very unique situation backstage. And I want to introduce you to Mr. John Mitchell, who came to us with an extraordinary request." A murmur rippled through the audience. Some people whispered. Others raised their phones to record. John stood tall beside Madison, unbothered by the curious stares. "Mr. Mitchell," Madison continued, "would you repeat for our audience what you told me just minutes ago?" John stepped forward with steady steps. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the studio with a surprising clarity. "Good evening, everyone. My name is John Mitchell, and I came here with a simple proposition. If I sing well, you give me a plate of hot dumplings." The reaction was instant and mixed. Some laughed, assuming it was a joke. Others looked confused, unsure how to react to such a humble human request. But a portion of the crowd, mostly older viewers, seemed deeply touched. Judge Raymond Cole, one of the most respected and famously blunt judges on television, leaned forward. "Mr. Mitchell, are you serious? You're asking for food? In exchange for a performance?" "Absolutely serious, Mr. Cole," John replied calmly. I haven't had a proper meal in 2 days, and I thought maybe I could use my talent to earn something so simple. Judge Lisa Morgan, known for her sensitivity and ability to spot hidden brilliance, quietly brushed away a tear forming in the corner of her eye. "Mr. Mitchell, that's incredibly touching. But tell me, do you truly believe you have the talent to be here?" John smiled with serene certainty. "Ms. Morgan, I wouldn't have come if I didn't know, not hope, no, that I have something to offer. Music has stayed with me through every hardship. It's the one thing that never abandoned me." The third judge, Marcus Riley, a veteran producer behind several national hits, crossed his arms, studying John with growing interest. "What kind of music do you sing?" "I sing what comes from the heart, Mr. Riley. I don't follow trends or genres. I sing what I've lived and what I've learned." "And what exactly have you lived through that can be turned into music?" Marcus asked, fully pulled into the moment now. John inhaled deeply, as if preparing to open his heart. "I've lived joy and sorrow, prosperity and need, love and loneliness. And through all of it, I learned one thing. Music is the universal language of the human soul. When we sing truthfully, we speak straight to people's hearts." The audience fell completely silent. Not a shuffle, not a cough. Nothing. Everyone was captivated by this simple, unassuming man. "Mr. Mitchell," Madison asked softly, "you've certainly intrigued us. Are you ready to show us your talent?" "More than ready, Ms. Rivera. I've waited a long time to share what I've carried in my heart." John stepped to the center of the stage and refused any musical accompaniment. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if grounding himself. When he opened them again, there was a new kind of light inside them. "I'll sing a song that has always given me strength in my hardest moments," he said. "A song about never giving up, never abandoning your dreams even when everything seems lost." And then the impossible happened. When John opened his mouth and released the first notes, the entire studio fell into reverent silence. His voice was rich, deep, and filled with raw emotion, like a wave of pure feeling rolling over the room. This wasn't technique. This was soul. A lifetime poured into melody. Judge Raymond Cole, who had heard thousands of singers, felt chills crawl down his spine. There was something hauntingly familiar in that voice, not in a negative way, but in a way that struck a buried memory. Lisa Morgan could no longer hide her emotions. Tears streamed freely. People who had laughed moments earlier now sat transfixed, deeply moved. Marcus Riley leaned forward, eyes narrowing, brain racing, trying desperately to place this extraordinary voice in his vast mental library of performers. When John reached the chorus, something magical occurred. Audience members began whisper singing along, as if they knew the song. Recognition spread through the room like ripples on water. Halfway through the second verse, Raymond Cole suddenly rose from his seat, eyes wide. Marcus did the same, shock written on his face. Lisa stared at them in confusion, unable to understand what was happening. John sang on, unbothered by the storm brewing among the judges. Every note was perfect, the mastery of someone who understood the power of music at its core. When he hit the highest, most emotional part of the song, the entire studio trembled with it. Even the technicians backstage stopped working just to listen. Social media exploded. People at home were posting frantically, "Who is this man? That voice isn't real. I've never heard anything like this." Raymond Cole looked shaken to his core. He stared at John, then at Marcus, then back at John, trying to solve a puzzle his mind refused to dismiss. When John finished, the final note hung in the air, suspended in absolute silence. No one moved. It felt like the entire world had paused. Then, slowly. Lisa Morgan began to clap. One person in the audience joined, then another. Within seconds, the studio erupted into a thunderous ovation. People rose from their seats, shouting, "Bravo!" Many were openly crying. But amid the chaos, Raymond Cole stood perfectly still, staring at John with pure shock. "Impossible," he whispered, but his mic picked it up. John bowed respectfully, then looked toward Raymond with quiet curiosity. "I know that voice," Raymond suddenly shouted, silencing the room instantly. "I know that voice. I've heard it before. I know it." The crowd froze. The camera zoomed in. The air tightened. Lisa asked, confused, "Raymond, what are you talking about?" Raymond rose again, hands trembling as he pointed directly at John Mitchell. "That voice. That song. Oh my God. This is impossible." Marcus Riley stood as well, breath catching. "Ray, you're thinking what I'm thinking?" "Yes," Raymond said, barely containing his emotion. "That song. Never too late to begin again. I know that song." The audience began to whisper louder. People were fumbling for their phones, some already recording, others typing furiously on social media. Comments like, "Guys, what is going on?" and "The judges are in shock," started popping up on live streams and reaction feeds. Madison, ever the professional, tried to regain control. "Raymond, Marcus, can you explain to us what is happening right now?" Judge Raymond Cole stepped down from the panel and walked toward the stage. His footsteps echoed through the silent studio. When he reached John, he stopped and stared straight into his eyes. "Sir," Raymond said, his voice lower now but so intense that everyone leaned in to hear. "I need to ask you a very important question." "Go ahead, Mr. Cole," John replied calmly. "Your name. Your full name." A hush fell over the entire studio. John smiled with the same serene composure that completely contrasted with the tension in the air. John Mitchell. The reaction was instant and explosive. Raymond grabbed his head with both hands. Marcus let out a choked sound of disbelief. Lisa shot to her feet, eyes wide. "No way," Raymond blurted, his voice trembling. "You, John Mitchell. That John Mitchell." The audience erupted into controlled chaos. People stood up, others screamed, some began to cry. The name John Mitchell surged through the studio, whispered, shouted, repeated over and over. Everyone, please." Madison tried to calm the room. "Can someone explain to me who John Mitchell is?" Marcus hurried down from the panel, almost stumbling in his rush. "Madison, John Mitchell was one of the greatest singers in this country. He sold millions of records. He was an icon, a legend of American music." "Was?" Lisa asked, still in shock. "Madison," Raymond said, now with tears in his eyes. "He disappeared from the spotlight years ago. Nobody knew what happened to him. He just vanished." The camera zoomed in on John's face. He stood calm amidst the chaos. There was no surprise in his expression, only a quiet acceptance that his secret was finally out. "It is true, Madison," John said softly. "I was a singer. I did have success. For a while. But that was a long time ago." "A long time ago?" Marcus almost shouted. "Man, you were the one who sang Father's Heart, Rode Back Home, Morning Star. Everybody knows your songs." As if on cue, a few people in the audience began humming the melody of Father's Heart. Within seconds, half the studio was quietly singing along, creating a chilling, unforgettable moment the cameras captured perfectly. Lisa, finally processing what she'd heard, stepped toward John on shaky legs. "Mr. Mitchell, your songs were part of my childhood. My mom used to sing Morning Star to me so I could fall asleep." "I'm glad to hear that, Ms. Morgan," John replied with genuine warmth. "That's all I ever wanted, to be a part of people's lives." Raymond, still trying to understand, finally voiced the question everyone had in mind. John, what happened? How do you go from being a national icon to a man asking for food in exchange for a song? Without shame, John finished gently. I know how it sounds. And it is a long story, Mr. Cole. At that moment, the producers realized they were witnessing something historic. Backstage, Harold Bennett was frantically signaling the camera operators to capture every angle, every reaction, every breath. Mr. Mitchell, Madison said, now visibly moved, the entire country is watching. Millions of people who grew up with your music are seeing this moment. They deserve to hear your story. John turned to the main camera, as if looking straight into every living room in America. I know you have questions, he said. I know you want to understand how I ended up here, and I will tell you. All of it. Now? Lisa asked, almost afraid of the answer. Now, John nodded. But first, I need to say something to everyone watching. He fixed his gaze on the lens, and his voice gained a power that silenced the studio instantly. I am not here today because I lost everything I had, he said. I am here because I found something far more valuable than any success I ever knew. I found the truth about what really matters in life. The intensity in his voice was hypnotic. Even the crew backstage stopped working just to listen. It does not matter how many records you sell, how many awards you win, or how much money you have in the bank. What matters is how many hearts you touch, how many lives you make better, and whether you can hold on to your humanity when everything else falls apart. Raymond was visibly shaken. But John, what happened? How did you lose it all? John took a deep breath, preparing to tell a story that would change the way everyone thought about fame, success, and real wealth. My story will shock you, he said, eyes locked on the camera. Because it shows how a life can flip upside down in a matter of months, and how sometimes losing everything is exactly what you need to finally find yourself. You could hear a pin drop in the studio. Online, the show had become the most talked about event in the country. Hashtags like John Mitchell and Vomash Legend Returns were exploding across every platform. Are you ready, John asked, to hear how a man can lose millions and still gain something infinitely more precious? His voice carried the weight of deep suffering and deeper understanding. Everyone in the studio nodded, mesmerized by this man who had suddenly been revealed as a living legend. Then I will tell you the most important story of my life, he said. A story about how I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what is truly worth holding on to. It all started at the peak of my success, John began. His voice echoed gently in the perfectly silent studio. I had just released my 5th album. It sold over 2 million copies in 6 months. Sold out arenas, multi-million-dollar contracts, a 15-room mansion. I honestly believed I had conquered the world. The camera caught every nuance of his face as he spoke. It was impossible not to feel the sincerity behind each word. But success has a price nobody warns you about when you're climbing, he continued. I trusted all the wrong people and doubted all the right ones. Raymond leaned forward, completely absorbed. What happened, John? My manager at the time, John said, a man named Paul Andrews, handled everything for me. I just wanted to sing. So I let him manage my money, my contracts, my investments. He told me he was multiplying my fortune, that I would never have to worry about money again. John paused and looked up at the studio ceiling, as if replaying the pain in his mind. For 3 years, I lived like a king. I spent without thinking, because Paul kept telling me there would always be more. I bought expensive cars for my family, paid for my kids to study overseas, helped dozens of people who needed it. I thought the well would never run dry. Lisa quietly wiped another tear. And then, she asked, And then one day, John said slowly, I was sitting in my home office when the bank called. My account was empty. Not just empty. I was in debt. Deep debt. A soft murmur rolled through the studio. It was hard to imagine someone losing that much. I found out Paul had set up a fake company and had been funneling all my money into it. He forged my signature on documents I had never even seen. By the time the authorities started investigating, it was too late. He had left the country with almost everything I had. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. That's brutal, man. That wasn't even the worst part, John continued, his voice dropping lower. The worst part was learning that people I thought loved me had really only loved what I could give them. What do you mean? Madison asked softly. When the news hit the press, John said, my phone stopped ringing. Friends I'd known for years simply disappeared. Invitations to parties were canceled. People I had helped crossed the street to avoid me, pretended not to know me. You could hear the hum of the studio lights. My own children, John faltered, taking a deep breath before continuing. Ashley and Ryan, they were ashamed. They had built their whole identity on being the children of John Mitchell, the star. When the money was gone, they didn't know who they were anymore. They abandoned you? Lisa asked, her voice thick with emotion. Not exactly, John said, with surprising compassion. It was fear. Fear of being associated with their father's failure. Fear of rebuilding their lives without a famous name. I don't blame them. They were raised in a world where people are measured by what they have, not who they are. Raymond cleared his throat, clearly moved. And how did you end up? Like this. First, I lost the mansion, John said. Then the cars. Then everything else. The only things I had left were the clothes on my back and an old guitar my father gave me when I was a teenager. He smiled then, a small, peaceful smile that surprised everyone. And that's when I discovered something incredible. What? The whole studio seemed to ask at once. I discovered, John said, that I didn't need any of it to be happy. He let the words sink in. When I started singing on the streets with that old guitar, I met people who, in 5 minutes of conversation, gave me more genuine joy than some rich friends had given me in years. I met Nina Harris, an 80-year-old woman who sells candy at a crosswalk. She taught me that real wealth is waking up every day with a purpose. I met Sam, a homeless kid who shares the little he has with those who have even less. He taught me that generosity has nothing to do with how much money you have. The audience was spellbound. Many had tears in their eyes. Didn't you feel angry? Marcus asked. Didn't you want revenge on the guy who stole everything from you? At first I did, John admitted. I spent months bitter, furious at everyone and everything. But anger is poison you drink, hoping someone else will die. I was killing myself from the inside. So what changed? Madison asked. A child changed it, John said. He paused just enough to make the entire room hold its breath. I was singing in a plaza one day when a little girl came up to me. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her clothes were torn, she was barefoot, and it was obvious her life wasn't easy. When I finished singing, she clapped and said, "Mister, your song made my heart feel warm." Lisa broke down completely now, tears streaming openly. In that moment, John said, I understood my true purpose. Not to sell records and fill stadiums, but to use my voice to warm hearts, to bring a little joy to those who needed it most. And that's what you've been doing all these years? Raymond asked, his voice unsteady. That's exactly what I've been doing, John said. I've sung in hospitals for people going through hell. I've sung in shelters for kids who needed hope. I've sung in nursing homes for seniors who felt forgotten. And I discovered that every single smile I brought to someone's face was worth more than any applause I ever got in a packed arena. The studio was wrapped in reverent silence, Even the crew backstage stood frozen. "That is why I am here today," John continued, looking straight into the cameras. "I did not come here to beg for food out of desperation," John said calmly. "I came to show that no matter how low you fall, you can still find a higher purpose. I came to prove that real talent does not disappear when the money does." "But do you miss it?" Marcus asked. "The fame, the success, the recognition?" John smiled with a kind of wisdom that only comes from being broken and rebuilt. "You know what I miss?" he said. "I miss my children. I miss holding them and telling them I love them. No matter what. I miss being a father, not a celebrity." At that moment, Madison's phone started buzzing insistently in her hand. She glanced at the screen, and her whole expression changed. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice trembling, "I just got a very special call." The entire studio leaned forward. "Someone is on the line, and they want to talk to you." "Liv?" "Who?" John asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Madison looked at him, eyes filling with tears. "Your daughter Ashley is on the line. She's been watching the show and wants to talk to you." The silence that settled over the studio was so deep, it felt like the entire world had stopped to witness this moment. John stood motionless for a few seconds, trying to process what Madison had just said. His daughter, Ashley, on the line. She really wants to talk to me?" he asked. For the first time since stepping on stage, his voice sounded fragile. "Yes, Mr. Mitchell," Madison confirmed, holding the phone with trembling hands. "She's very emotional. She begged us to let her speak with you on air." Raymond, Lisa, and Marcus exchanged glances. In decades of television, they had never seen anything this intense. The audience was frozen. Many people had their hands pressed to their chests, as if they could feel John's heartbeat from where they sat. "Put her on speaker, Madison," Harold urged from the back of the studio. "The whole country needs to hear this." Madison tapped the speaker button and held the phone near her microphone. A faint static crackled. Then the sound of nervous breathing on the other end. "Dad?" came a fragile female voice, overflowing with emotion. John closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing every vibration of that word. Dad. A word he hadn't heard from her in so long. When he opened them again, they were shining with held-back tears. "Hello, sweetheart," he said. His voice broke. "Is it really you?" she asked. "It's me, honey. It's Dad. It's Ashley." The entire studio seemed to exhale at once. Lisa was crying openly. Raymond wiped his eyes discreetly. Even Marcus, known for his tough, no-nonsense demeanor, looked shaken. "Dad, I was watching the show with my kids," Ashley said. "I recognized your voice. At first I thought I was imagining it. But when the camera showed your face," she stopped, clearly fighting for control. "Go on, sweetheart," John said gently. "I'm here. Dad, I cried so hard I scared the kids. They asked why Mommy was crying, and I didn't know how to explain that I had just found the grandfather they never knew they had." The words hit John like a lightning strike. Grandchildren. He had grandchildren, and he'd never met them. You have kids?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I do, Dad. 2 of them. Mason is 8, and Lily is 5. They're beautiful. They have your eyes." John pressed a hand to his chest, too overwhelmed to speak. The audience was utterly silent. Many were crying along with this conversation that could pierce the heart of anyone who'd ever loved their family. "Dad," Ashley continued, "I need to ask for forgiveness. I need to ask so badly for forgiveness." "You don't have to," John began. "Dad, please let me say this," she cut in. "I was a coward. When everything collapsed, when you lost it all, I should have been there. I should have hugged you and said that it didn't matter if you were famous or not. You were still my father. Tears now streamed openly down John's face. Raymond rose from his chair and quietly handed John a tissue. John nodded gratefully. "But I was so scared, Dad," Ashley said. "Scared people would judge me. Scared I'd lose my friends. Scared to admit that my whole life had been built on your fame." "Ashley, sweetheart, you don't have to justify anything," John said softly. "I do, Dad, because all these years I wasn't ashamed of you. I was ashamed of myself. Ashamed that I walked away from the man who taught me to walk, who sang to me when I had nightmares, who worked day and night so I could have everything I wanted." The emotion in her voice was so raw that people in the audience were sobbing openly. "Do you know what hurts me the most?" Ashley asked. "What, honey?" John whispered. "That my children grew up not knowing the most amazing grandfather in the world. That when they ask me about family, I make up excuses because I'm too ashamed to admit I abandoned my own father." John took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Ashley, listen to me very carefully," he said. "I have never, not for 1 second, been angry with you or with Ryan. You were young. You were scared. You were raised in a world that teaches people their worth is measured by what they have. But Dad, let me finish, sweetheart," he said gently. "All these years, I have carried you in my heart. Every song I sang on the street, I sang thinking about you. Every person I helped hoping that someone out there would do the same for you if you ever needed it." Madison had to sit down. Her legs were shaking. This conversation wasn't just touching the people in the studio. It was reaching millions of viewers across the country. "Dad, do you forgive me?" Ashley asked. "Ashley, there is nothing to forgive," John said. "You are my daughter, and I love you, unconditionally. I always have. I always will." "I love you too, Dad," Ashley said through tears. "I always did, even when I was far away, even when I was too afraid to look for you." In the background, a small voice suddenly cut in. "Mom, why are you crying?" Ashley let out a shaky laugh. "That's Mason, Dad," she said. "He wants to know why I'm crying." "Can I talk to him?" John asked, hope breaking through his voice. "Mason, come here, sweetie," Ashley said. "Someone very special wants to talk to you." There was the sound of little footsteps, then a curious child's voice. "Hello?" "Hi, Mason," John said softly. "My name is John Mitchell." "Hi, Mr. John," Mason replied politely. "Why is my mom crying?" John smiled through his tears. "She's crying because she's very happy, Mason. Sometimes people cry when their hearts are full of joy." "Are you the singer from TV?" the boy asked. "The one who was just singing?" "Yes, Mason," John said. "That was me." "You sing really good," the boy said. "My mom said you're a very special person to her." John looked at the camera, then at the audience, then back at the phone. "Mason, do you want to know a secret?" he asked. "Yes," the boy said eagerly. "I'm your grandpa." The silence that followed was broken only by Ashley's louder sobbing. "My grandpa?" Mason asked. "Like, my real grandpa?" "Yes," John said, tears streaming. "My real grandson." "Whoa," Mason breathed. "I have a grandpa who's a singer. Lily, come here. Our grandpa is on TV." There was the sound of a little girl running, then an even higher voice. "Grandpa? Where's Grandpa?" "Hi, Lily," John said, his voice shaking. "I'm your grandpa, Grandpa John." "Hi, Grandpa," she chirped. "Are you coming to our house?" The innocence of the question made the entire studio hold its breath. It was the question everyone wanted to ask, but nobody dared to. "Lily," John said, his voice trembling. "Grandpa really wants to meet you and Mason." "Dad," Ashley came back on the line. "Where are you? I want to see you. I need to hug you. I need to ask your forgiveness in person." "Sweetheart, it doesn't matter where I am," John replied. I will come to you right now, if I have to." At this point, Madison gently stepped in. "Ashley, this is Madison from the show," she said. "Your father is here with us in the America's Rising Stars studio." "Seriously?" Ashley gasped. "He's there? Right now?" "Yes," Madison said, "and I have a suggestion." The studio leaned in again. "How would you feel about coming here?" "Tonight?" Madison asked. "I want this stage to host the most touching reunion American television has ever seen." You'd do that?" Ashley asked, stunned. "We'll do more than that," Madison said, glancing toward Harold backstage. He nodded immediately. "We're sending a car for you. A black SUV from the network is already on its way. Your kids will meet their grandfather live, in front of the whole country." Ashley's joyful cry echoed through the speakers, followed by the excited voices of the children. "Dad," she said, "don't go anywhere. We're coming." 45 minutes after Ashley's call, the studio of America's Rising Stars had become the focal point of an entire nation. Harold paced backstage, coordinating a level of logistics the show had never faced before. Social media was on fire. "Madison," a producer whispered into her earpiece, "the ratings are historic. 42 million people are watching live. We have never seen anything like this." Madison looked at John, who still stood at the center of the stage, with an almost impossible calm for a man about to reunite with his family after so many years. "Mr. Mitchell," she asked gently, "are you nervous?" John smiled with that same quiet serenity that had already conquered everyone watching. "Madison, I've dreamed of this moment for so long," he said. "It doesn't even feel real that it's actually happening." Lisa, who hadn't stopped crying since the call, stepped closer. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Of course, Ms. Morgan." "What are you going to say to your grandkids when you finally meet them?" John paused, looking into the cameras as if he could see Mason and Lily through them. "I'll tell them their grandpa spent a long time learning some hard lessons so he could become the best grandfather in the world," he said. "I'll tell them that every day away from them taught me what truly matters in life." At that moment, Harold's phone rang. He answered, then signaled excitedly to Madison. "They're here," he announced. "They just pulled into the parking lot." The audience exploded in applause and cheers. People stood. Others yelled. The entire studio buzzing with an almost electric energy. "Friends," Madison said to the cameras, "in just a few moments, you are going to witness one of the most emotional reunions ever broadcast on American television. John Mitchell's family is about to be reunited, after years apart." Raymond Cole cleared his throat, clearly overwhelmed. "John, how do you feel right now, as a man who is about to get back what he loves most in this world?" John smiled, eyes still wet. "I feel like a man who is about to get back what matters more than anything, Mr. Cole." Marcus, who had been unusually quiet for the last few minutes, stood up from behind the judges' table. "Man, I need to say something," he began. "In 20 years in the music industry, I have never seen a story hit me the way yours just did." "Thank you, Mr. Riley," John replied. "There is something else you don't know," Marcus continued, his tone turning more serious. "What is it?" John asked. "While you were talking with Ashley, my phone would not stop ringing," Marcus said. 3 major record labels have already reached out. They all want to sign you. 2 top-tier managers are begging to represent you, and 1 national charity wants you as their ambassador." John stood silent for a few seconds, letting that sink in. "Do you know what that means, John?" Marcus asked. "You're about to be successful again, huge, bigger than ever." John shook his head and smiled. "No," he said softly. "It means I'll finally have the resources to help far more people. It means I can turn this second chance into opportunities for those who need it most." His answer left everyone speechless. At a moment when almost anyone else would have thought about reclaiming fame and wealth, John was still thinking about how to serve others. Just then, a side door of the studio opened, and Jake, the security chief, walked in with 3 people behind him, and the entire studio forgot how to breathe. First came Ashley, a beautiful woman in her mid-30s, with chestnut hair and eyes exactly like John's. She held the hands of 2 children, Mason, an 8-year-old boy with messy hair and a shy smile, and Lily, a 5-year-old girl with braids and bright, curious eyes. The moment John saw his daughter, his emotional control finally snapped. The tears he'd been fighting all evening flooded his face. "Dad!" Ashley cried, letting go of the children's hands and running toward the stage. "Sweetheart!" John answered, hurrying down the steps to meet her halfway. The hug that followed was so powerful and so real that there was not a single dry eye left in the studio. Father and daughter held each other like they were trying to compress all the lost years into a single moment. "I missed you so much, Dad," Ashley sobbed. "I missed you too, sweetheart. Every single day," John whispered. Meanwhile, Mason and Lily stayed where their mother had left them, watching everything with a mix of shyness and wonder. Lisa Morgan stepped down from the judge's platform and crouched to their level. "Hi, Mason." "Hi, Lily," she said gently. "Do you know who that man is?" Mason nodded. "That's our grandpa. He sings really pretty." "Would you like to meet him?" Lisa asked. Lily nodded so hard her braids bounced. "Yes. I want to meet Grandpa the singer." Lisa took their hands and led them toward the center of the stage, where John and Ashley were still locked in their embrace. "Mr. Mitchell," Lisa said softly, "there are 2 people here who really want to meet their grandpa." John slowly released Ashley and looked down, really seeing his grandchildren in person for the first time. The expression on his face was beyond words. "Hi, Grandpa," Mason said shyly. John dropped to his knees so he'd be at eye level with them. "Hi, Mason." "Hi, Lily," he said. "You're even more beautiful in person." With the total innocence of a 5-year-old, Lily stepped closer and touched his face. "Grandpa, why are you crying?" she asked. "I'm crying because I'm happy, Lily," he said. "Sometimes grown-ups cry when they are very, very happy." "Oh," she replied thoughtfully, as if that explained everything. "Grandpa, will you sing for us?" The simple question made John laugh through his tears. "Would you like Grandpa to sing?" he asked. "Yes," both kids shouted in unison. The whole studio laughed and applauded. At that moment, Raymond had a sudden idea. "John," he called out, "how about singing the song Ashley loved most when she was a little girl?" Ashley looked at her father, eyes wide with anticipation. "Do you remember?" she asked. "Of course I remember," John said, rising and gently taking his grandchildren by the hands. It was Morning Star. Recognition swept through the studio like a wave. Morning Star had been one of John's biggest hits, a lullaby that had cradled an entire generation to sleep. John began to sing without any backing track. His voice rang out, clear and crystal, filling the studio. But this time, everything was different. He wasn't singing for charts, for sales, or for stadiums. He was singing for his family. Mason and Lily stood frozen, spellbound by their grandfather's voice. Ashley sang quietly along, pulled back into her childhood. And then something magical happened. The audience began to join in, at first in whispers, then louder, until the entire studio was singing Morning Star together, a chorus so powerful the walls seemed to vibrate. Lisa, Raymond, and Marcus sang too, completely taken by the moment. When the song ended, the silence held for a heartbeat, then broke under a roaring ovation that lasted more than 2 minutes. People screamed, cried, and applauded standing. But in the middle of that chaos, something unexpected happened. The side door of the studio opened again, and a man stepped in, hesitant. It was Ryan, John's son, who until that moment had given no sign of reaching out. Ashley saw him first. "Ryan, you came!" she cried. John turned and saw the son he hadn't seen in even longer than his daughter. Ryan looked nervous, but determined. "Dad," he said, his voice shaking. "I saw everything on TV. I couldn't just stay home." "Ryan," John whispered, opening his arms wide. "Dad, I was a coward," Ryan said, walking toward him. "Worse than Ashley. I didn't even have the courage to call." "Come here, son," John said. The second hug was just as powerful as the first. Now the father, daughter, and son stood together at center stage, while Mason and Lily watched with wide eyes, finally seeing the missing pieces of their family come together. "Uncle Ryan!" Lily squealed, running over and wrapping herself around his legs. And there, in the middle of the most watched show in the country, the Mitchell family stood reunited, fully, for the first time in years. Madison, watching with tears in her eyes, joined them on stage. "Friends," she said to the cameras, "you have just witnessed a moment that will live in the history of American television." She turned to John and saw in his eyes that he had something more to say. "Madison," John said quietly, "tonight is not over yet. I have a very important announcement to make for the whole country." "The whole country is listening, Mr. Mitchell," Madison replied, standing beside the reunited family. "What do you want to tell them?" John looked at his children, then at his grandchildren, now clinging happily to his legs. Finally, he turned to face the cameras that were broadcasting his face into tens of millions of homes. "First," he said, "I want to thank all of you who are watching. You have given me the greatest gift a person can receive, a second chance to have my family back." The audience listened in reverent silence. Every word echoed through the studio, heavy with emotion. "But there's something very important I've learned in all these years, singing on the streets," he continued. "When you receive a blessing, you have a responsibility to turn it into a blessing for others." Raymond leaned forward again, intrigued. "That's why," John said, "I want to announce the creation of the Morning Star Foundation, an organization that will use music to change the lives of people in vulnerable situations." Marcus shot to his feet. "Man, that's incredible." "And that's not all," John went on, his voice gathering strength. "I want to invite every artist in this country, famous or not, to join this movement. Let's bring music, hope, and dignity into hospitals, shelters, nursing homes, and communities in need." Lisa was crying again, but now from admiration. "Mr. Mitchell, this could help thousands of people," she said. "Millions, Ms. Morgan," John replied gently. "Because music has no borders. It doesn't care if you're rich or poor, young or old. Everyone has a heart that can be moved by a song." Just then, Harold appeared from backstage, frantically signaling. He had just taken a call that would change the course of the night yet again. "Madison," he whispered into her earpiece, "we've got a huge surprise. Put the big screen down. Now." The massive screen descended from the ceiling, and the image that appeared froze the entire studio. It was a live feed from multiple locations across the United States. "Friends," Madison announced, breathless, "you are not going to believe what is happening across the country right now." The first image showed a major hospital in New York City, where dozens of doctors and nurses were standing in a corridor, singing Morning Star. Patients in wheelchairs and in beds were singing with them, some crying. "This is happening live," Madison explained. "Right now. Medical staff and patients singing together, inspired by Mr. Mitchell's story." The second image showed a retirement home in Florida, residents gathered in a common room, holding hands, singing and wiping away tears. In Houston, Madison continued, "Look at this." The third video showed a city park full of people who had spontaneously gathered with candles and phones held up, singing John's songs. Families, teenagers, seniors, children, all together in a moment of pure unity. John stared at the screen, stunned. In all his career, he had never seen his music ignite something so immediate and so deep. "Dad," Ashley whispered, "do you see this? The whole country is singing. Because of you." "Not because of me, sweetheart," John said quietly. "Because people are starving for hope, for love, for connection. My story just reminded them it's still possible." Lily tugged at his pant leg. "Grandpa, why are the people in the TV crying?" she asked. John picked her up into his arms. "They're crying from happiness, Lily," he said. "Just like you cry when you get a very special present." "And what was the present?" she asked. "The present," John said, "was remembering that no matter how hard life gets, there is always a chance to start again. There is always a chance to be happy." Mason, who had been quietly taking it all in, stepped closer. "Grandpa, are you going to be famous again?" he asked. The innocent question made John pause. "Mason, let me explain something important," he said gently. "I have always been famous to the only people who really matter. To you, to our family. Everything else is just extra." At that moment, a studio phone rang insistently. Madison picked it up, and her expression changed completely. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said slowly, turning back to the cameras. "We have just received a call from the White House." The audience gasped. A very high-ranking official would like to speak with Mr. John Mitchell live, on air. The crowd erupted into shouts and applause, just when it seemed the night could not get more surreal. It did. A solemn voice echoed through the studio over the sound system. "Mr. Mitchell," the voice said, "this is the president. I am calling to congratulate you on this extraordinary display of resilience and love." John stepped closer to the mic, clearly stunned. "Mr. President, this is an honor," he said. "The honor is mine, Mr. Mitchell," the president replied. "Your story is moving not only America, but the world. I have reports that your performance is being watched live in dozens of countries." Marcus leaned toward Raymond and whispered, "Man, this just became a global phenomenon." "Mr. President," John said, "I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you to support the Morning Star Foundation. We're going to need serious backing if we want to bring music and hope to the people who need it most." "Mr. Mitchell," the president answered without hesitation, "you can count on the full support of the federal government. We are going to make your foundation part of a national initiative." The studio's reaction was explosive. Applause, shouts, people openly sobbing. John Mitchell had just received official support for his mission to change lives through music. "And that's not all," the president continued. "I would like to invite you to sing at the White House next week, at a special event dedicated to family and overcoming hardship." Ryan grabbed his father's arm, overwhelmed. "Dad? You did it. You really turned your fall into something bigger." "We did it, son," John replied softly. "Our whole family did." When the call ended, Madison, eyes full of tears, faced the cameras again. "Friends," she said, "in 30 years of television, I have never seen anything like this. But I know Mr. John Mitchell still has something he wants to say." John lifted Lily into his arms and held Mason's hand. Ashley and Ryan stood on either side of him. "I want to speak directly to every single person watching right now," he began. His voice reached into every living room. "It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter if you've lost your job, your family is fractured, or you feel like hope is gone." He paused, looking straight into the main camera. Look at me. I lost millions. I lost my fame, my house, my family. I hit rock bottom, but I discovered that rock bottom can become the strongest foundation you will ever build your life on." The audience sat in absolute silence, soaking in each word. Real wealth is not what you own. It is who you are. Real fame is not how many people know your name. It is how many people you can make smile. Real success is not how much money you make. It is how many lives you change for the better. Lisa wiped away tears and whispered, "They should teach this in schools." "That is why," John continued, "I am inviting each of you to be part of this chain of love and hope. You don't have to be a singer. You don't have to be famous. You just have to be a human being who cares about other human beings." Mason tugged gently at his grandfather's shirt. "Grandpa, tell them about the girl," he said. "The one who said your song made her heart feel warm." John smiled and smoothed his grandson's hair. "Mason just reminded me of something very important," he said. "Everything in my life changed the day a homeless child told me that my song made her heart warm." He turned back to the cameras. "Every one of you has the power to warm someone's heart. With a smile, with a kind word, with a hug, with a song. Never underestimate your ability to change someone's day." Ashley stepped up to the microphone. "Can I say something?" she asked. "Of course, sweetheart," John said. "I want to apologize," Ashley said, voice trembling, "to every family in this country that is torn apart by pride, hurt, or misunderstanding. Life is too short to spend it away from the people we love." Ryan moved to stand beside his sister. "And I want to say this," he added. "It is never too late to come home. Never too late to apologize. Never too late to start over." Lily, still sitting in her grandfather's arms, raised her hand. "Can I say something too, Grandpa?" "Of course, my princess," John said. "I want all kids to know," she said, with disarming simplicity, "that having a grandpa is the best thing in the whole world." The entire studio laughed and cried at the same time. Raymond stood and began to clap slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "you've just witnessed the most special night in American television." Lisa and Marcus joined him in applause. Then the entire audience rose to their feet, a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Fighting through her own tears, Madison delivered the closing words. "America," she said, "tonight you've seen that miracles are real, that love always wins, that family is sacred, and that music can unite hearts and transform lives." John looked at his reunited family, then at the moved audience, then at the cameras carrying this moment into millions of homes. "Thank you, America," he said simply. "Thank you for giving me the chance to prove that it is never too late to start again, never too late to be happy, and never too late to change someone's life for the better." A soft instrumental version of Morning Star began to play as the credits rolled, but the entire studio kept singing along, creating a moment that would be remembered forever. On social media, the show generated more than 50 million interactions in a single evening. Across the United States, people stepped out of their houses to hug their neighbors. Estranged relatives picked up their phones and called each other to make peace. The Morning Star Foundation received offers of support from business leaders, artists, and ordinary people from every corner of the country. Within a week, it had guaranteed funding for years to come. But the most important change happened in people's hearts. Millions of Americans went to sleep that night with a renewed belief that there is always hope, always a chance to start again, and always a song capable of warming even the coldest heart. And when John Mitchell finally left the studio, carrying Lily in his arms and holding Mason's hand, walking beside Ashley and Ryan, he was no longer just a once famous singer who had lost everything. He was a man who had found the true meaning of life: to love, to be loved, and to use his gifts to make the world just a little kinder for those who need it most.